There is an island off the coast of Japan that looks like it's sinking. From a distance, it looks like a warship drifting alone in the East China Sea. Grey walls, broken windows, no trees, no roads, no people. But this was never a ship, and it was never empty. 50 years ago, more people lived on this island, packed into less space, than almost anywhere else on Earth has ever recorded. Families, children, schools, a cinema, a hospital. Then, almost overnight, every single one of them left. What happened here didn't just empty an island. It left behind one of the strangest, most contested ruins in the world. And to understand why, we have to go back to the thing that built this place in the first place: coal. Its real name is Hashima. Most people call it something else: Gunkanjima, Battleship Island. The nickname comes from its shape. Tall concrete buildings packed edge to edge, wrapped in a seawall built to survive typhoons. From a passing boat, the whole island looks like the hull and superstructure of a warship, cutting through the waves. It wasn't built to look that way, it just ended up that way. Every inch of usable space on this tiny island was covered in concrete because there was nowhere else to put it. The island is barely the length of a few football fields, and somehow it once held over 5,000 people. To understand how that's even possible, we need to start with something much smaller: a rock, and the coal underneath it. Coal was first found here around 1810, toward the end of Japan's Edo period. At first, it was nothing dramatic. Local operators dug shallow pits by hand. The coal was good, heavier and more efficient than most of what was being mined elsewhere in Japan. But for decades, nobody had the resources to take it seriously. That changed in 1890. Japan was racing to modernize. Steel, shipbuilding, railways, all of it needed fuel, and one company was buying up the coal to power that transformation: Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi purchased Hashima for 100,000 yen. In today's money, that's roughly 2 billion yen. It wasn't a random investment. Mitsubishi already ran a coal mine nearby. Hashima was the next piece of the puzzle. What nobody could have predicted was just how far that company would go to make a barren rock in the ocean livable. Here's the problem Mitsubishi had to solve. The coal was underground. Underwater, in fact, running out beneath the seabed. But there was almost no land to put a town on. So they built one 6 times. Between the late 1800s and the early 1900s, engineers expanded Hashima through 6 separate land reclamation projects, piling stone and material against the edges of the island until it nearly tripled in size. Seawalls went up around the new land, both to hold it in place and to block the typhoons that regularly battered this stretch of ocean. Then came the real challenge: housing thousands of workers on a rock with almost no room to spare. In 1916, Mitsubishi completed something that had never been built in Japan before: a 7-story apartment block made entirely of reinforced concrete. Wooden housing kept getting destroyed by storms, so they built something a storm couldn't take down. It worked. And over the next few decades, more concrete towers went up, connected by bridges, stairways, and covered walkways, until residents said you could cross the entire island in the rain without ever needing an umbrella. There was still one problem left: water. The island had none of its own. In 1957, Mitsubishi finished Japan's first undersea water pipeline, running fresh water from the mainland, under the ocean floor straight into people's homes. By now, this wasn't just a mining operation anymore. It was a city that was about to become one of the most crowded places that has ever existed. By 1959, close to 5,300 people were living on Hashima. The island covers about 6.3 hectares. Do the math, and you get a population density of around 83,500 people per square kilometre. In the residential section alone, it was even higher. For comparison, that's roughly 7 times denser than central Paris is today. And yet, somehow, life here wasn't chaos. It was structured, almost self-sufficient. There was an elementary school and a junior high school, both 7 stories tall, with elevators used just to carry school lunches between floors. There was a fully functioning hospital, a 400-seat movie theatre, a pachinko parlour, bars, restaurants, a swimming pool. Every morning, boats brought fresh produce and fish from the mainland to an open-air market the locals nicknamed Hashima Ginza. It was said to be crowded even when it rained. Personal space, though, was almost non-existent. Some residents had as little as a square metre and a half to themselves. Apartment blocks held hundreds of single-room units stacked on top of each other, connected by narrow corridors. And somewhere in the middle of all that concrete, there's a detail that says more about this place than almost anything else. There was no grass, no trees. Salt spray and coal dust killed almost anything that tried to grow. So in the 1960s, residents started carrying soil over from the mainland by boat, bag by bag, just to build small rooftop gardens. A few square metres of vegetables and flowers, 9 stories above the sea, in a world made entirely of grey. By this point, life on Hashima wasn't just functional. It was by some measures better than life on the mainland. Miners were paid well. Near the end of the 1950s, almost every household on the island owned a television. Nationally in Japan, fewer than 1 in 10 households did. For a moment, this crowded, isolated island was one of the more prosperous places in the country. It wouldn't last. Through the 1960s, Japan's energy economy was changing. Oil was replacing coal as the country's main power source. Mines across Japan started shutting down one after another, and Hashima's coal, once so valuable, was no longer worth digging up. In January 1974, Mitsubishi officially closed the mine. What happened next is one of the most striking details in this entire story. The people didn't trickle out over years. They left in about 3 months. Furniture stayed behind, school supplies stayed behind. Old televisions, calendars, personal belongings, all left exactly where they were, because there was no reason to carry them back to the mainland. An entire, densely packed city, emptied in a single season. For the next 35 years, nobody came back. No maintenance, no repairs. Just salt air, sun and typhoon winds, working on empty concrete year after year. Because so little could grow on the salt-blasted rock, Hashima didn't turn into an overgrown jungle ruin like some abandoned places do. It stayed grey, stark, frozen, almost exactly as it was the day the last boat left. It sat like that, sealed off and mostly forgotten outside Japan, until 2009, when a small section of the island was finally reopened with safety walkways built for tourists. And then, in 2012, most of the world saw it for the first time, without even realising it was real. Hashima's silhouette appeared on screen as the villain's lair in the James Bond film Skyfall. The approach shots were real, the interior scenes were not. Filming inside the ruins was too dangerous, so those were built on a soundstage in England. But the exterior, that unmistakable crumbling shape rising out of the ocean, was the real island. And after that, people started asking what it actually was. The answer turned out to be more complicated and more serious than most viewers expected. In 2015, Hashima was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List as part of a group of sites representing Japan's rapid industrialization. But the listing was contested from the moment it was proposed. During the Second World War, starting in the late 1930s, Mitsubishi used conscripted Korean and Chinese labourers on Hashima, brought in under Japan's wartime labour policies. Conditions for these workers were harsher than for the regular Japanese miners. Some who lived through it reportedly called the island Hell Island. At the UNESCO session in 2015, Japan's representative publicly acknowledged that a large number of Koreans and others had been forced to work under harsh conditions at some of these sites in the 1940s. Japan committed to building an information centre that would explain that history honestly. What followed was years of disagreement over whether that promise was kept. In 2018, and again in 2021, the UNESCO World Heritage Committee formally raised concerns that Japan hadn't fully followed through. That disagreement between Japan, South Korea and international observers remains unresolved. It's a difficult chapter, but it's part of the island's true history, alongside the engineering, the density, the rooftop gardens, and the televisions in every home. Hashima was never just one thing. It was a mining town, a record-breaking city, and for a period, a place of real suffering, all in the same 6 hectares of concrete. Today, visitors can take a boat from Nagasaki and walk a narrow section of boardwalk along the island's edge. Most of it is still off-limits, too unstable to enter. From that boardwalk, you can look up at apartment towers that once held hundreds of families now standing empty, slowly losing pieces of themselves to every storm that passes through. It's strange to think that a place this small held so much, a record-breaking population, a first-of-its-kind apartment building, a pipeline running fresh water beneath the ocean floor, homemade gardens fighting for space on bare concrete roofs, and a history of forced labour that took decades to even begin to be acknowledged, Hashima was built because people needed coal. It grew because thousands of families made an impossible island livable, then made it feel, for a while, almost ordinary. And it was abandoned in the time it takes a season to change, because the world simply stopped needing what it had to offer. What's left now is a shape on the horizon that still looks like a battleship. But if you look closely enough, you can still see the outline of the school, the apartment blocks, the rooftop gardens that no longer exist, an entire city built on a rock in the ocean that the world moved on from almost overnight. Which abandoned place should we explore next? Leave your suggestion in the comments. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to RuinToLux for more forgotten places and true stories.